Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to our program. This is Crossfire, challenging secular views with biblical theology. And this is episode 1 of our podcast. And we are so glad today to have with us producer extraordinaire and engineer, my good friend now, Vaughn, who's here with us. And thank you, Vaughn, for being here with us and all the work that you are doing to launch this brand new podcast that's designed for interaction and discussion and, of course, challenging each other's views and robust and constructive arguments. And we need this kind of environment in the church world particularly, and in our circles, because this is missing from our communities, where we can dialogue and talk and come to conclusions and come to certain understanding of matters that are important in this rapidly changing world. The world is changing so rapidly. So Vaughn, what's been going on? How are you doing?
Yes, I am well, Ronald. I'm glad that you used a lot of colorful adjectives and you stayed away from all my pronouns. I prefer adjectives to pronouns. You can describe me any way you want, but I will still be me. So yes, it's great to be back on Crossfire for our official first episode, and I can't wait to get things going. You know, the website is coming along nicely. We are ready to go live with everything as soon as we've got our first show done. And I hope everyone that's watching, everyone that's listening is looking forward to joining us on this journey and challenging secular views with biblical theology in a safe environment. Ronald.
Well, thank you, Vaughn. Well, this is Crossfire, where we are challenging secular views with biblical theology. And as we mentioned, this is a brand new program, and you can catch us on all of our platforms, social media platforms, our website. This is Crossfire, our YouTube channel, and we want to fill it with good content that is rich and content that can bring great understanding to those that are following us and those who will perhaps just pounce on this or find it somewhere in their journey. So we're also doing a kind of a documentation of some of these matters concerning the church. Very important matters, because I think one of the issues is that the church abandons some of these current issues concerning the day and age that we are living in, or the spirit of this age that we are living in. So it's very important for us to have these discussions, and we invite you to come on board, join us on these platforms, join us by subscribing, following, and sharing some of our programs. And to all our friends out there, especially in the church world, I'm sure our faces are a little bit familiar to you, and Mr. Matomela that's here with us today. And we hope that you join us and follow us, and you are receiving some sort of grace from these conversations that we are having, and some sort of impartation regarding our dialogues here. And we invite you to our program as well. If you'd like to be a part of our program, kindly email us or just send us a text message on the contact number for This Is Crossfire. Well, today, as Vaughn mentioned, is episode 1, our first session with our first guest. And we are truly honored and privileged to have Mr. Matomela here with us, Mr. Tommy, as he has invited us to address him. And we are so glad to have you here with us today, Mr. Matomela. What an honor, what a privilege to have you join us. I hope that you are well.
Very well. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm glad to be part of this first episode. It's really a grace and honor for me.
Thank you so much. Mr. Matomela is here with his dearest wife and mom and mother of his 3 beautiful children, and we are so glad she is out waiting in the reception area for him, and I'm sure praying for our best here today. But what a great family. You were born, you said, in the Eastern Cape?
Yes, I was born in the Eastern Cape, in a small town or city, if you like, Mthatha, in the
Mthatha,
old
yes.
Transkei, which became a Transkei Republic, which is part of what today is called Eastern Cape in South Africa.
And then you moved to the eThekwini, what's called eThekwini now, to the Durban. Was it called Natal when you moved? Natal or KwaZulu Natal when you moved to Durban?
Yes, it's about 4 years now that I've moved to KZN.
Okay. So it's not a very long time.
It's not a very long time.
And how are you finding this province?
I'm finding this province, and I love it because it gives us I would say, the menu of who we are as South Africans. There is a kingdom, the Zulu kingdom, under the newly coronated King Mrs. Zulu, Kazwelithini Maete. We are part of that Zulu nation. I'm coming from a traditional community myself. I belong to the Beles, who used to be one of the ancient kingdoms in the continent of Africa. We still have the remnant of that kingdom in the Eastern Cape under Mabandlas. So Dabezita is one of our kings. But we were one people as what people call today Nguni. And yet, originally, we people who do not sin. In other words, Abantu Abangoni. People who do not sin. Righteous people. That is a topic on its own. We can delve into that. Secondly, we have a good mixture, of what I normally say descendants of sons and daughters of Noah. I call that generation Noahites,
Yeah.
You mostly, my understanding is that Ham, those who are African are mostly descendants of Ham.
Yes.
Those who are of Asian descent, they come from Shem, and those who are of Caucasian or European descent, Japhet. So effectively, we are coming from one ancestor.
Yes.
And you can go back then to Adam. So I normally say we are Adamites. So we are coming from Adam.
Yes.
So this the province then is presenting us with almost all of that. Is a microcosm, I would say, of South Africa, because South Africa, we have all the people from all over the world. Others have come in a legal way. Others have bought their way here.
Yes.
Others have come illegally. But all the same, we are here, all of us. What is important is that how do we live and coexist in a peaceful manner, so that as a people, as Adamites, if you like, as Noahites, we can live in peace, love one another, develop one another, so that we are a peaceful people in South Africa, in Africa, and in the nations of the world. That is what is important as we are here today. So I'm really excited to be part of KZN. Thank you.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. You're such a wealth and a treasure to us, because I have interacted with you and have heard you speak on a few occasions, and we were always enriched every time you delivered an address or spoke or even preached the word of God or brought us understanding of some of the issues we are going to be talking about today. We are going to cover quite a few issues today and topics, some of them randomly, some of them specifically. But just to get back to you, Mr. Matomela, you schooled in the Eastern Cape and finished your studies, and what was your higher education there? Did you university days and things like that?
Yes, after passing my matric, I attended the University of Transkei then, which is Walter Sisulu today. I was doing part-time because I was already working for the post office.
Okay.
So I was working in the post office as a counter clerk, in the office, post office bank, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working during the day, in the afternoons from 5, attending until I completed my degree with the University of South Africa.
So what field did you study?
I studied international politics and history on the main, of course, with languages and other ancillary. So I had this calling on issues of governance and the nation. One reason which made me to be to read and love the Bible and love God. I see God as the creator, as I was saying when praying. I see God as my father. I see God as my king. I see God as my lawgiver.
Yes.
I see him as my judge, as my savior. All these are attributes of God.
So you predominantly grew up in a traditional Christian family with Christian views and Christian living?
Definitely. I grew up in a rural village in Kwekwe. Yes, I was born in Kelane, but I came as a child into Mthatha. It was from Tsolo then. We were removed by force by the Matanzima regime. They wanted to grow a forestry there, which is still there today. So we were forcefully removed to Mthatha area. So we are a traditional community. We under kings. We had our own chief. And then when we came into Mthatha, we're under the Tembus, the king of the Tembus. The current one is Buelekhaya Dalindyebo. So my home, also our family on the main, we attended the Presbyterian church.
Right.
So I grew up in a church environment. I was very active, in the children's church and so on. But I made some observation that when I was reading the Bible and comparing our behavior, I was not happy.
Right.
So then I started drifting to the apostolic churches,
Right.
and so on and so on. And I've been like Abraham of old. I've been seeking the righteousness of God. I've been seeking, the true worship and faith in God without the entanglements of religion. I'm still seeking that, and I'm inviting all those who have questions that this is the platform we should engage, so that if we have grace from God, we can graduate and operate above
move to maturity.
Move to maturity.
That's
Don't
right.
see ourselves as children, so that we can move to a space where we recognize ourselves as the sons and daughters of God, who are placed here by God to do His will and purpose.
And that's a biblical principle, to move on from elementary things, elementary doctrines, to the more mature things. But I just wanted to talk to you about your growing up days in the church, as you mentioned, in the Presbyterian background that instilled all those values in you. But you started to search for something deeper. And what was your first introduction to politics? And before you answer that question, Mr. Matomela is a leader of many organizations. He's a kingdom builder. Is involved in socio-economic upliftment, education, and also in government. You have been involved in writing policy and legislation and lobbying, and also your work that you're doing with the church. For those of you who are listening to Mr. Matomela for the first time, is involved deeply in governmental issues particularly, and I can see why you did study political science and you have that background, and it has brought such a richness and productivity, particularly for us to see things from that perspective, how to operate within governmental circles. But how did you, was it at your university days that you got involved with politics very firmly?
I would say it started with my interaction with the Holy Spirit when I was reading the Bible. You know, as a child, I just, sense this hunger for me to read the Bible. And that's why I moved, for example, from the Presbyterian Church. When I was reading the Bible, I searched for a place where people are speaking, preaching, and living what is in the Bible. So, and I was reading about the liberation of the nation of Israel led by Moses. And I understood that same situation we are in South Africa. We were oppressed. Well, of course, the situation is different because in Egypt, they were oppressed in what I would call a foreign country. But in this case, we were citizens oppressed by foreigners.
Yes, in our own country.
So the situation was more or less the same. So this grew up and I was going deeper into the scriptures, trying to understand, is this different from what was happening in the Bible and what is happening today? So by the time I reached matric, I was convinced that there's this conviction that I must be like Moses and liberate my own country.
Yes.
And the situation was such that I even asked my brother, who was working in the mines, to buy me a radio. Because I wanted to listen. And he bought me a radio. I can tell you, Pastor Ronald, I was listening to Radio Freedom of the ANC.
So that really shaped your mindset.
I was listening to Voice of Tananarive, Voice of Moscow, British, American, all those radios. I was listening to them. So
was it not controlled at that time? You could tune into these frequencies.
It was a struggle.
Yes.
In fact, those were obstructed big time, by the South African government.
Yes.
So I would look for sports and find a way
to stumble
listen.
On those.
And I would go from shortwave to others. And at the end of the day, I followed what was happening.
And there would been a ban on books and literature that the government would have stopped at that time.
Definitely, the liberation organizations like the ANC, the PAC were banned in South Africa.
So they operated what we call underground.
We say they were operating underground. So when I go to university then, I was troublesome to my history lecturers, honestly. I was really troublesome. And I think that attracted the special branch which were planted at the university. Because one day in 1980, they visited my home at night, around about 12, They detained me, they searched everything, they got the books. I had written to Azapo, because Azapo was not banned, So I've written to them, asked them for any material I could read, because of the hunger to be this freedom fighter, inspired by God of freedom, liberation, if you like. So I was detained and I spent time, but they had no case against me. After 2 weeks or so, they released me.
Yes.
But
it was common practice to...
It was common practice, but fortunately for me, when I was detained, I met some detainees who were already part of the underground work.
Right.
That is how then when I came out, I was already connected. So I started working underground for the liberation movement. Since then, I regard myself as a freedom fighter. And a nation a nation builder for life.
Yes, a freedom fighter and nation builder. We see that in you. And, of course, that has evolved over time. Sure. And, progressed in various ways. And then you seriously got involved with the ANC, quite, dedicated to that organization. And you were a active member. Not on the peripherals. You were actively involved with the ANC from your early teens and 20s, roundabout?
Yes. As I said, from 1980, I met ANC activists. Some were BCM, the Black Conscious Movement, like Matthew Goniwe and others. We met in Umtata prison. Mm-hmm. Then I had connection then with the ANC on the main. So I started to get involved, and during my holidays, I will take my annual leave and record that I'm going to my rural home,
right.
and then disappear underground,
yes. Yes.
And then it started like that until we were arrested, 1981 up to 82. There was a case, and then after that case, I went outside. Then I was instructed to come and work inside, and I was in fact given an assignment to work with the teacher unions. So I work with Transkei Teachers Association, and we later formed National Education Union of South Africa, which are the founding organization of today's South African Democratic Teachers Union. So right. By 94, then as we were affiliates of COSATU, I was mandated to go to the provincial legislature.
So you played an active role in SADTU.
In fact, I would say I'm one of the co-founders of SADTU. Yes.
Okay. And then you moved to, of course, playing an active role in
the provincial legislature.
Did you also have involvement in the unions?
Of course. When we formed SADTU, Transkei Teachers Union was not deeply involved in politics because of the situation in the Transkei. Individuals, of course, were involved. Then I was able to link up with them. And then, as I've said, we formed SADTU, and SADTU then affiliated to COSATU. So we were an affiliate of COSATU. That is why then all the unions within COSATU were requested to submit names. So SADTU submitted my name, right. And then we were deployed to various legislatures and national.
And you were a bona fide member of the ANC, active in the inner circles. Tell us a little bit about that, your interactions with some of the leading figures, particularly in the 90s. I think they're fading off a bit now, but they still have a strong harm. But you were involved in the early stages of the ending of apartheid, in the struggle, as you mentioned, the liberation struggle, the freedom of our nation. That was around the mid-90s. But you are part of the inner circle and close circles of some of the leaders in the ANC particularly.
Yes, Ronald, I was really privileged to work underground with leaders like Chris Hani, who was the chief in Lesotho. That is where I was, trained in various areas. And we used to have engagements, if I'm not mistaken, every afternoon on Wednesdays from 3-4 hours. We'll engage on.
So you had a close friendship.
Political discussions.
You had a close friendship with him.
Comradeship.
Yes.
Comradeship. So we were involved in those discussions. And I remember interacting with such leaders even after the unbanning of the organizations which came back from 1992 to be involved in negotiations. What I would love to say about ANC to you and the viewers and listeners out there, the foundations of the African National Congress are interesting. This is what attracted me to the ANC, by the way. I found out that the most, if not all, of the founders of the ANC were traditional people. So they came from traditional communities, some of them from royal houses.
Right.
Number two, most, if not all, of those leaders, they were ministers of the kingdom of God,
Right.
ministers of religion, if you like.
Yes.
Now, this was an interesting, combination. And of course, they were civic leaders. So that's why ANC was called a broad church.
Right.
I mean, the fact that the church, ANC adopted a church song like Nkosi Sikelel Africa,
Yes.
tells you the foundations of the ANC.
The influence, yes.
So they believed that God of the Bible is God of liberation.
So how did they mutate? What do you see was the main? Let's just fast forward to the modern ANC, if you wish. How did they mutate and also abandon these principles and values that they built on in the early stages that had so much of respect, and the foundation was so strong, as you mentioned? How did they evolve into what we're seeing now is so distant from those early days?
I think that's a burning question.
Yes.
While all of the people like myself, who I'm just a listener today, and I'm enjoying this immensely, but I can hear everyone there going, but Uncle Tommy, that ANC is not what we're seeing today.
Today, yes.
And we see this, I just want to just remind people, although we're speaking about local stuff, this is a worldwide thing, because if you look at America, where it started, godly foundational members who started the USA and where it is now.
The founding fathers, yes.
The founding fathers were all same
biblical principles.
Biblical principles.
This is a global phenomenon. I would say.
Yes.
We grow up in our homes. We are undergirded by these biblical values we're talking about, and with confidence we are launched by our parents, by our families and communities to transform the world. But I'm telling you, there are people who are readily available to transform us when we get into that battle, because it's a battle of controlling minds of the people of God. Let me put, because whether you are righteous, you regard yourself unrighteous, it's immaterial. We are all created by one God, so we are the people of God. Now,
so even good people, they don't have to be Christians or believers, as we call them. Vaughn, what I'm saying, they start off so well.
Yes.
And I suppose a lot of these leaders can be described that way. But something happens.
Yeah, we can go secular, we can go church,
politics.
And we can see this drastic shift in people as soon as they become the center of attention or get too much power.
So what is that? Why does that happen? Is it because they bow to the influence? Is it, of course, there's lots of corruption, there's money is exchanged to bend your ideology or your religion or your view to buy into ideas and philosophies and, of course, laws that go against their inner beliefs?
The truth is that, Ronald, maybe to help ourselves to understand the background is to go back to the Bible. Here is Adam and Eve. They've given the whole world to govern. They've given wealth, abundant wealth, to enjoy.
Right.
And more. God says to them, we are going to enjoy this for eternity.
Right.
For eternity. You're not going to struggle. Just maintain what you have here. In fact, you are allowed to fill the whole earth. I mean, that type of freedom. But here's maybe it's not an event as I'm trying to explain. It was a process of the spirit of devil. Others say Satan. Others saying Lucifer.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that spirit, which had already lost the glory of God, and the grace of the kingdom of God, vowed to make it so that the human beings will follow him as a rebel. So effectively, he started his own kingdom of darkness and lawlessness.
Yes.
So he was recruiting from the descendants of Abraham, or rather of Adam. But before that, we know that everything was fine until the symbolic snake. I don't know it was real, whether it's a
consciousness or
whatever.
A
but
symbolic.
The bottom line is that an evil thought came into our mind as Adam, influenced us to undermine all the foundations, the values, principles, will and purposes of God.
So the nature of God, the image, the likeness that we were once created and formed, and this will be, some will call it original sin, the fall of man, and this became inherent, and it's an unfolding reality that wickedness is still with us. But we don't want to focus too much on just wickedness and evil, but these are the realities that we are facing. Our battle is a spiritual battle. I think one of the things that we want to highlight is, when we talk about pulling down strongholds and imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the nature and the power of Christ Jesus, in whom we believe as a church. These issues are planted and seated in a mindset, in a mentality. And how do we, the greatest miracle, one of our leaders always says, the greatest miracle is not the healing of limbs and legs and blind eyes seeing. The greatest miracle is the transformation of the mind, where we have this mind of Christ. And that's the battle. So ultimately, the battle with, whether it's us or brothers out there that are going into these political systems, some of these, systems of university and academia, and we find that they eventually, I use the word mutate or evolve into something that looks very strange from the original image. But it is the reality that this is what we are coexisting with, and the battle is for the mind. That's the battleground. And so when we look at a political party, not to mention one per se, but across the board, political parties and other spheres of influence, they are constantly engaging this dark mind or wickedness, and they're open to it and embrace it. I don't know if it's premeditated or it's planned, but it happens. It enters in and influences these organizations, and unfortunately, as you would agree, it has infected, and it's also influenced the major political parties in our country, which you have more understanding about. Can you talk to us about that and how you have seen this gradual change in not only the ANC but in the major political parties?
Yes, I agree with that sentiment, and I want to submit that the mind is the battlefield. If you are going to be a righteous person, unrighteous person, it is one in the mind. Of course, there is a role of the heart, but this battle is spiritual, first and foremost.
Yes.
And it manifests itself in religion, it manifests itself in politics, in the economy. Everything we do on earth is shaped spiritually. Mm-hmm. Every throne on earth is a spiritual throne.
Yeah.
But it's either a righteous throne or an unrighteous throne.
Yes.
So nobody is immune. We are all exposed to that. I would say myself, I'm a survivor of that war. At my age, to be still talking about God, about the Holy Spirit. Otherwise, the battle is so strong that people will even be shy. to say they are born again, because you will be ridiculed, in politics. I remember the Communist Party, when we were still working underground, they recruited me to join the Communist Party. But I said to them, unfortunately, the Communist Party is rejecting my belief in God. So if they say there is no God...
Well, that was the factor that caused you to depart? You would say
exactly. That is the point where I love their ideas, because they are in the Bible.
Yes.
The problem is that those who claim to be following a biblical perspective, they have already abandoned it themselves. So when they were, for me, when you observe, you even read the concepts of communism. I wrote a paper, I've been looking for that paper. Everything can be traced from the Bible.
Correct.
Their philosophy is a biblical. So the reason why I loved them is that here is a group of people who are trying to implement what is in the Bible, but their error is to reject the source of life.
Yes.
So I didn't want to go inside. I said, I will only join you when you acknowledge that the source of that plan you have is God himself. Then I can come in. Then they would say, no, come to me.
Don't speak
we're
of
in a
that.
revolution here. Yeah. I said, then I'm sorry. I can't join you. But I worked with them. And I even loved Christian, as I said, as my leader. I even challenged him in Lesotho, for example. I said, you were a server as a young boy in a church. What happened? So he was influenced by ideologies, communism, socialism, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So he himself was a victim of this war we are talking about. But I challenged him. I said, look in South Africa. I said, look in myself. I'm a Christian. I'm a Bible-believing believer, if you like. Why then would you regard me as the enemy of the struggle? He said, indeed. He said, we've got the Council of Churches, which has been supporting, the liberation struggle in word, in preaching, as well as in practical, social support to detainees and families of detainees and those who are in prison. And he said, the situation probably in Europe is different from our situation in South Africa, because in Europe, the revolutionaries tried to define their enemies. They could not exonerate, the church. The church was part of their oppression. But he said in South Africa, it's totally different. That is why in the Communist Party, you will find that there are pastors, they are believers,
yes.
They are there. But they are failing, in my view, to demonstrate that God is the source of life. Yes. So move away from the philosophy of saying you are atheist. But they will tell me that no, that is not our business there. We are there to fight the enemy. But the enemy is trying to win them over. Now, the question is, how do we see then that in our political philosophy all over the world, even here in South Africa? Let's take a practical example. We are here now, 2022. Our nation is collapsing. The church is there. Political parties are there.
Yeah.
Traditional communities are there. Citizens are there.
And we are like 80% Christian.
We claim to be 80% Christian and other faith religions, if you like. Because I believe that there is one faith in God, but we have got many religions.
So why are we failing?
Why are we failing? So those who are in religion, they are blaming political parties. Those who are traditional communities, they are blaming political parties. Why? Because political parties have stolen the sovereign power of citizens.
Yes.
And granted it to themselves.
Yes.
So that we can look into themselves as our saviors.
Yes.
Now we are victims of that. We are just spectators. We are hoping that they will bring heaven on earth.
So in a sense, they become gods to the people. The people have to look to them. And that brings us into issues of welfare, of social grants, and we want to talk about that in a short while. But I wanted to, you mentioned two words that are becoming very popular, and I want to bring some clarity on it. One is communism, and the other is socialism. Now, if we are studying the trends and watching the trends, particularly in the past few years, particularly in the West, we are seeing this very aggressive shift in societies, in these stable, strong societies, supposedly. So, what can you explain to us for our audience and our friends that are listening and those that are following this discussion? How would you, because you mentioned that it aligns with the Word of God, and how would you define it in its most simple sense, these issues of communism and socialism that's sort of hidden in Scripture, that you can help us to understand, not from a political background where people have hijacked these issues and created certain demands. For example, if anyone has read a little bit of prior to during slavery in the United States, I don't know why people just struggle to understand this. In fact, the Democratic Party in the United States was a party of slavery, and of course the Jim Crow laws. It was basically apartheid style laws. And so what the Democrats in the United States found out, we are losing control of the votes. So what we would do is, we are the party of slavery. That's a hidden historical fact. It's hidden. It's not even taught in the universities, discussed openly. It was actually the Republicans that fought for the freedom of slaves. But as time progressed, they were losing control and losing their votes because much of the black community was moving over to the Republican Party. And so they created this condition and said, the way we can bring these people back on our side, modified this slavery, if you want to call it, and bring them back to vote for us where we can come into authority and government, we'll create a welfare system and create a dependent system where they depend on government. And so I want to touch on that before we also join this with an article that you shared that was written by one of our colleagues, and you can tell us more about this person, in the Daily Dispatch concerning the shocking pregnancy numbers and the spike of young teenagers falling pregnant, because that's also directly linked with this welfare grant system. If you can just touch on socialism, communism from a biblical perspective, and how do you see the dependence on the state, because then the state can control you. You have to subscribe to their laws, and some of these things they're introducing in the school system, in the public square. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Thank you, Ronald. This is a broad, topic.
Yes, definitely.
I want to start by saying, maybe the questions we must answer first, pose and answer first. Who created resources?
Yes.
Resources were created by God, even before humankind was created.
Yes.
Why? Because God wanted humankind and creation as a whole to be sustainable forever.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, God is an economist. So if God is an economist, whose economic policy are we following?
Right.
So you will find that we are following our own economic policies. The question all of us as a people of God must pose, what was the original economic policy given to us by God to have sustainable development?
Yes, have dominion, multiply, and
that's it.
And
You
rule.
have those three,
Yeah.
and the most important one is the one we're forgetting: replenish.
Replenish, yes.
Replenish.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at the world today, we are faced with floods, climatic changes, and so on. All these things are as a result of our conduct.
Mismanagement.
Mismanagement. If you look at the unrest, wars, I mean, Ukraine and Russia at war as we are speaking, and the whole world is affected. Is that war really necessary? So it tells you the mindset
state, yeah.
of our leaders. So the political systems or model or governance models we have, we must review all of them. The economic systems, we must review all of them. From, I would say, the manual of the creator of the whole universe. So if we look at everything from that perspective, I am sure that we'll be able to find solution on each and every challenge we're facing on earth. So the question we should pose then, where socialism or communism has been effectively implemented and helped all the people of God, it's very difficult.
Very difficult, yes.
On the other side, communism, capitalism,
Yes.
where capitalism has been effectively implemented and granted, I would say, abundant life to everybody, nowhere.
Doesn't work.
So if you look closely on capitalism, that is raw exploitation of the resources without any form of replenishment, effectively destroying the environment itself, destroying the future, not only of the people, everything which was
And
created by
it is
eroding everything.
it's also a pyramid scheme. You have those on the top,
That's it.
and the ones below are carrying the ones on the top. But can socialism, communism, of course we know capitalism it exploits people. Can government and people exploit the system by taking advantage of it? Because in a socialist, communist society, someone has to bear the load. Someone has to pay for these things. So idealistically, this is the system we want. One of the things that was mentioned in Acts 2:42, which for some reason is left out whenever people talk about Acts 2:42, which we are familiar with, continue daily steadfastly in apostles' doctrine, fellowship, breaking of bread, and prayer. We are familiar with that text. It's the culture of the kingdom of God or the church. But one of the portions that is left out, I feel deliberately, is they had all things in common, that they shared their possessions. So you mentioned this earlier, if capitalism is a wicked system, and we agree with that, this system exists within the church itself. So how are we to confront this when it is what is happening in the church itself? There is no communism. There is no sharing
Of
wealth. It's not distributed. We're not talking about charity now. Every church can say, well, we do this and do that and feed the poor. But it is still a system that is skewed. It's off balance. How do we address that matter? And should we address that matter? And how do you see that, Mr. Matomela?
I believe we can address that from the perspective of the source of life, God himself. Let's go back. Why God created wealth? If he said, let us fill the whole earth with human beings, are the resources enough to sustain us The answer is yes. The problem is hoarding of resources.
Yes.
Hoarding of resources.
Yes.
Mammon, which is operating
Yes.
in the hearts and minds of men.
Yes.
So the poverty we see, in God's eye, there is no poverty.
Yes.
Is poverty deliberately created?
Correct.
We can do research.
So it's
Ronald.
greed.
It's greed.
Yeah.
In fact, if the producers have produced so much, let's say 100% bananas, and the market needs 20 for the markets to get abnormal profit, ask the question, what they do with the 90%? They destroy it.
Yes.
That's how capitalism is so evil. It applies general. In fact, capitalism is so evil to the extent that
You believe it exists in the church?
if you go deeper, you will find that they treat us as citizens like livestock.
Yes, correct.
They treat us like
Correct.
livestock.
Do you believe it exists in the church, and how do you see it when you see this within the church? It's a reality.
The problem is that the church is in a prison, imprisoned by these ideologies and these economic systems. It is operating in the church. We have, as I've said, the original gospel. We have forgotten about it. Let's take a practical example. Missions were designed to do exactly what we are saying, to develop people so that people are self-sustainable.
Sustainable, yes.
But that has been taken away from the church. We are charity organizations.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, these are the natural resources of God meant for you, we work together, we polish our skills, we collectively
Yes.
work.
Yes.
By the way, it is a sin not to work. Because God created Adam and said, work.
Yes.
So if people are not working, it means they are sinning. But they may not be doing that deliberately.
Deliberately, yes.
It's the system which
Yes.
has confined them,
Yes.
so that they remain cheap labor, they remain consumers. The few rich people are hoarding wealth.
Yeah.
They are even hiding the profits, taking them somewhere instead of reinvesting them for the total economic liberation of the people. So all the systems, the economic systems we have in the world today are not working. We need new system which will serve all the people of God, irrespective of their nationality or gender or whatever.
Right.
That is what I would say. So the church is in a prison of these systems. Political, you take in South Africa, for example, we have just taken a government to court a few years ago, 2017, and we won that case on the 11th of June 2020, because we saw because I was asking this question, but we are the church, we're supposed to be sons and daughters of God, but we are slaves of political parties. During the years of struggle, we're saying all power to the people shall govern. When I look, man, people are not governing.
They're powerless.
They are observers. They are spectators. The power is gone.
Yes.
Is with the political
They're
parties.
subservient now to the government.
And when you look at political parties, they only constitute less than 1%.
And so much
the
of power and control.
99% is a slave of 1%.
Right.
That happens even economically. So everything, you look at it politically, you look at it from a socio-economic perspective, everything is wrong. That is why, if you look at the world globally, we are a failed civilization.
Yes, definitely.
You can look at America. The rivers in Europe, in fact, are drying
up.
Why? Mismanagement
Yes.
of the resources
And
of
then
God.
they even suffering, we're talking about economic powers, suffering food shortage, human resource, skills, and all kinds of issues that they are facing. But I want to just zoom in, because we got you here and we need to tackle this subject. Now, I heard an interesting story by a previous president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, who I have great respect for. I think he was stable-minded type of leader. And somehow or other he was ousted out or whatever happened there. But he told an interesting story, a recent story, where he was giving an address. And he was talking about a certain farm that was abandoned by, I guess it's a farmer who inherited the farm. And of course, he could not manage this farm because, according to him, you could not grow anything because the soil was not conducive to grow any vegetation. And so he wanted to, he abandoned the farm. And so I think it was 4 or 5 gentlemen that went and inquired about this farm and said, sell us this farm. And the gentleman said, well, there's not much you can do with this farm because nothing's going to grow in this ground. It's fallow ground. It's bad ground. And they insisted that they want to purchase this farm. And they did. After some pushing and shoving, they did. But they transformed the farm and they started to grow all kinds of vegetables in this farm. But they were, I think, Zimbabweans. He says the story that they were, teachers of mathematics and science, these guys. And on weekends they would farm the land. And they turned that farm around by simply, getting, manure. And that's how they figured out they could treat the soil. And it's become a very rich place, sustainable place. They turned it into a business. So his argument was this, that the people who are given land or farms or given certain areas for agriculture rather have the money than turn these lands, like you said, it's ours. God gave it to us. Now, is that a phenomenon? It is a norm, or people prefer to just have the cash and the money rather than having a succession plan where they can have this inheritance and have these lands and take care of our own people in our country rather than depending on food source from the outside, depending on the West, depending on the IMF, depending on grants and loans. Is this a case that you do see, and how should we address that?
You see, Ronald, there are people, there are farmers who know better than we are discussing here. I've engaged them from 2 fronts. One on the issue of land ownership and redistribution and farming, as you are saying. On the issue of land, I engaged them and asked them a question. What are the biblical values governing ownership of land? So we engage and we reach an agreement that land belongs to God, but He freely granted to all of us to have a fair share of that land so that we can sustain ourselves. Then I say to them, now, is the situation we have in Africa, where African people were granted land by God, and now powerful people from out came and grabbed the land, and they became like slaves now. Is that fair? They say it's not fair. Then I said, can't we use the same biblical principle to solve that problem? They said 100%. Their objection is that this land must not be given to government, because if you give it to government, either it's going to be given to their family friends or political party friends and so on. We're ready to discuss anything to transfer land to the people of South Africa, because we're also people of South Africa.
Right.
Fairly, in principle, they agree with that. Now, on the side of agriculture, as you have said, that farm failed because of toxins from fertilizers and all that kind of stuff. So that is, I would call that artificial farming, and call the other one natural
that's
farming.
Right, that's
you
right.
know.
Yeah.
So if we can go back to the natural ways of producing food, our land would remain.
That was a
productive.
success. Natural. Go back to the natural.
I mean, even if you read about Shabbat, as human beings, we were said you must get rest. Even land, after 7 years, we were commanded that give land rest, for a year after that, and so on and so on and so on. So, if we go back to those principles, land can be, worked again to be productive.
Sustainable, yes.
And there are farmers here as we speak, here in South Africa, I believe all over the continent of Africa, who have gone back to what is called farming God's way.
Yes.
And they are demonstrating that.
The modern world likes to say we've got organic food now. Isn't that just normal farming, the way it was done back in the day?
Yeah. It's got a special aisle,
but
organic
but now it's
products.
It's packaged as organic, and you pay 4 times more for stuff that is how you're supposed to grow things naturally anyway.
These systems we are using in producing food are evil. Let me just
yes, that's true.
Let me take one example.
But why do we bow to outside influence so much? Why do we do the food that is coming, that is produced, that's killing people, damaging our economy? Why are we so easily bowing down to the West, where we can grow our own food? And the example that I want to mention, how can we address that we become independent? We are too dependent. We look to the West for even in the church, even for doctrine. If it doesn't come from the West, then it's not right. If you say what you wanted to say from the Word of God, there's a doubt, there's a suspicion, and it's dismissed. Why is this mentality so dependent that if it comes from the West, it's right?
We are slaves of the West currently. Let's put it frankly.
Yeah.
Like in the days of Nebuchadnezzar, the world was a slave of Babylon. In the days of Rome, the Roman Empire, the world was the slave of the Roman Empire. In the days of the British Empire, who were slaves of the British Empire. I mean, we can go on and on.
So it's a mindset.
It's the mindset issue. As we said, the mind is the battlefield. So, I was going to say, if you read the Bible, it tells you that God created, plants with seeds. But these guys, they sit in laboratories and create seed, which will not, after it has produced a plant, you can't use that plant to plant again.
Correct.
It automatically destroys itself. You will have, why? Because they want you to go to them and buy new seed all the time. And if you use their seeds for so many years, you can no longer grow the ordinary seed there. It will die. So you have to work for 5 to 10 years for that land, to
replenish
to clean itself, and then you start farming again.
Yes.
Then I asked one farmer, I said, where can we get the original seeds? He said to me, in a low voice, Mr. Matomela, some of us are still keeping those seeds in abundance.
Right.
That then gave me an idea that there are people who even left Europe because they believed in the kingdom of God.
Yes.
The first inhabitants who came here were the people who were running away from oppression. Those people are still here in South Africa, but they were dominated by nationalism. They became themselves now prisoners of nationalism. So we must search for those people, some of them I know now, and bring them on board so that they can change the mindset of us being anti-white, if I may put it that way.
Yes.
And say, yes, we understand you feel like that because of what happened. Because we are, but they say, We are the remnant of the true Europeans or true sons of God who came here to take refuge so that together with you we can develop Africa to be self-sustainable. So we work with those people because they love this country, because it was their refuge. But there are others who have no interest to be Africans or kingdom people who are here to exploit, go to other European, sports and enjoy themselves. But my submission is that these are the people of God. Let us come up with a very clear vision which will embrace everybody. If you were an oppressor yesterday, you must accept that we are all people of God today. So the oppressed and the oppressors work together from scratch if needs be. And we deal with these issues on principles of God, if I may say. We'll ask the question, is it righteous that we have got more than 70 people owning, let us say, a percentage 10%, of the wealth, and then 10% of people owning 70%. If the answer is no, we'll say, okay, how then do we use the same principle of righteousness to ensure that we resolve this thing righteously, so that there is no loser? If you have got five farms, we'll say, ideally, how many farms do you need to do your business? You may say 2. So okay, let's make it sure that everybody who wants to produce food, you will have 1 or 2 farms. Right. Then everybody, and it does not apply to a particular race. It means everybody. So what I'm suggesting here is that we need to use principles which I would argue they reflect and manifest the ideology of the source of life. Instead of using our own ideologies which have failed all over the world. Even us, we must stop using religion as a solution, because all religions, as far as I'm concerned, have failed. So let us seek true faith in God, which can make us to be closer to God and live a life abundantly. As one people, loving one another in truth and in spirit. That is my submission as a way forward. In everything we are confronting today, there is an answer from the source of life. If you bought a Mercedes-Benz and you take it to the guys in the village who claim, or in the township claim to know, and it cannot get right, you take a bold step, you prepare to pay, you go back to Mercedes-Benz because they're going to get the right parts, get the right done. Mechanics, and sort out your Mercedes-Benz. You may pay expensively, but you will enjoy your Mercedes-Benz. I think that is the time for all of us. I'm saying, even if yesterday you were an oppressor, I was oppressed, we are saying today, let us come together. Why? We are coming from the source, same source, God himself, from the same parents or ancestors. We're coming from this. So we are one people. These differences of white, color, all these are all fake. I mean, if you look at the shirt you are wearing is black and white. No human being has got a color like that. But why would we accept that Vaughn is white because he is not white? Why would you say I'm black because I'm not like that? So we are brown people with shaded colors caused by melanin. It's a natural thing. We respond to the environment created by God. So why should we fool ourselves, fight on those things? Let us find solutions. And these solutions, unfortunately, Ronald, they are not in religion.
So
we are in God.
We are basically, if I hear everyone's conversation correctly here, because I'm with you on this, how can melanin in our skins separate us and divide us to such forms of hatred across the planet? There must be a greater plan, obviously, in this divisive nature that we are seeing in the world today. But we are all slaves of agendas. It's the agenda-driven narratives that are shaping our minds, that are causing us to fight against each other. Rich against poor, black against white, Chinese against Italian, and the list goes on. You can go LGBTQ versus the guys that don't agree with it, the woke movement versus the non-woke movement. There is such division in the world. There must be a plan here. It can't all just be randomly, because you're speaking about solutions here. And these solutions are found in the exact book and the exact ideologies that we are talking about regarding God and his place in the world and in our lives. Yet, the very solutions that we are talking about are the very things that are being taken away from society.
Yes.
This is crazy.
And it's, it's unfortunate that there are wicked and evil people that use these agendas, as Vaughan mentioned, to divide us, to drive a wedge between us on gender, on skin color, on our cultural backgrounds, ethnicity, and they really, to a degree, are having some success, because if you can keep people divided, we can control people. But let's, in the time that we do have, the short while that we do have, one of the issues, these are big issues, each one of them, if we unpack them, based on this ideology that comes to bring in wickedness into our communities, into society. And look, we are living in a different world altogether from 5 years ago even, or even 2 years ago post-COVID. We're living in a different world altogether. We're living in a different generation. We were talking early on, prior to this podcast, we were talking about the generation that's growing up now, information versus education. And, there's young people don't generally want to read and want to research or hear about politics or about different philosophies, ideologies, and get to know these things as opposed to a generation past. And that's the kind of people we want to talk to today. So, we are hoping that these discussions will stimulate the mind, will generate some interest on what is going on around in our world and in our communities and in our society, because we have a lot of skilled people, yes, in the church, in our communities, people who are resourced, people who are able, people who can be innovative, industrious. And, we found out, and we are discussing this more, that is why we like the city church concept, because it can bring solutions corporately, collectively, whether it comes from the church. We can include the business sector, the private sector, or even government. We can work together to solve problems. And the church has become so stuck in in their buildings, in their programs, projects, in their little activities that they do, but it's not really having an impact that we should have. So part of this you're offering, and I've heard you speak about this on many platforms, and I've read some of your documents. You are interested in solutions. We know what the problems are. We know what the issues are. And these solutions must come on the ground. They must infiltrate our church circles. So the city church concept, the collective, the coming together of the corporate, bringing our skills, bringing our resource and giftings and talents, if you want to call it, and abilities together is going to be a crucial exercise for the church. Because the average Christian is just involved in too much of, Vaughan and I had this conversation. I have it when we talk with our church groups and those around us. We're involved in too much of mundane things like music and singing, and which is good for our own emotion and experience. But it's not impacting the everyday world. So we have this good time on a Sunday. These issues that are coming into our nation, into our community, post the ending of apartheid, which still has its residual in every area of our life, as you mentioned. The mindset has not changed. This, this plantation mindset in our mind, the slave mindset, this mindset of being weak a weak people, that we have to look to someone else for solutions, the victim mentality that is still lingering over 25 years later. And it's understandable. It's going to take a long time, because I don't think people fully understand the depth of colonialism, apartheid, and some of these issues from the past that run very deep. Some choose to forget about it, don't talk about it. I think the young generation doesn't know too much about it or doesn't care for it. But it's passed on almost invisibly from generation to generation. And even, you have Africa, Africa as an whole, one of the richest continents in raw material. Brussels has more diamonds than our own country or any other African country, although they don't have a diamond mine. All our raw materials are looted, stolen, bought, or just given away for money and all of that. So I want to just focus our thoughts here today on this important part of the discussion. And you have been pushing this, that we need to come together to form an alliance to solve these problems in our local communities, the communities at large, and of course in the nations, and our nation particularly. And there are solutions. We agree with that. But it's happening in small pockets. But what is happening while we are fighting on one side, we have this complete breakdown on the other side. And what was startling when you introduced it to us, Vaughan knows a little bit more about this. The spike in teenage pregnancies, lawlessness amongst our youth particularly. What is going to be our future if we don't attend to these matters? And how? As let's take Alice Bailey's 10-point plan and ideologies to transform nations and to make these nations anti-God, anti-Christ if you wish. And part of this is to completely overturn communities and overturn nations. So you are one of the first people that I've heard on a public platform speak about this issue concerning the ideology of Alice Bailey and this 10-point plan that's been adopted in the United Nations, the EU, and I suppose the African Union as well, but was craftily trying to be adopted into the constitution of our country. And in part it is, because they say we have the most progressive constitution in the world. I don't know what that means, because it can be very dangerous or liberal kind of constitution. I don't know if that's a good thing. You can keep that question in your mind, because we need to address it. Was South Africa ready for a Eurocentric constitution with a predominantly culturally African nation, an ethos on African culture? Because some of these laws and practices are taboo. They are unheard of in African culture, even in other cultures, from our culture as well. It's unheard of. So how did it come through this plan that you mentioned concerning the 10-point plan to transform nations and make them anti-God? Can you touch on a few of those matters that I mentioned, and the startling figures, not only in teenage pregnancy, but education, the failure rate, the lack of education, the health sector? Every area has been impacted, but it's not happening loosely. There's a plan unfolding.
Well, this is very deep because it is the core of the struggle we're talking about, spiritual struggle. What you are mentioning is not accident, is planned. I mean, the source of that evil is Satan, that evil spirit, that wicked spirit, which is determined to corrupt humankind and influence humankind to disobey God and his plan of life for humanity and the whole creation. Alice Bailey was reading, listening to how what you would call today the global cabal,
Yes.
which believes that we are not human beings. They are the human beings. We are just animals. So they want to use us for trading. When we register ourselves as citizens, to them we register in their,
You're a product.
we are a product to them. That is why there are many attempts to reduce us into robots.
Yes.
But when they started, they were discussing these issues in their dark corners and saying, hey, guys, we have got a beautiful plan here. Let us say since the days of Adam, the days of Noah. But yes, we seem to be doing very well. But there are problematic people here. The Jews, the Christians, this is what they were saying. Although some may even say, but why the underworld would fight against Jews and Christians when other people would say we're exploited by the Jews, we are dominated by the Jews, we're colonized by Christians, and all that kind of stuff. But we'll engage that on another day. For today, let's agree then that Alice Bailey worked out a 10-point plan.
Yeah. Vaughn, can you just open that 10-point plan? Because some folk may be listening to this for the first time. We may have heard it in drips and drabs or see it unfolding. But if we can just read it out so we document it and know the workings or the devices of these evil plans and systems, but we're not going to tackle each one. As you said, it's vast, broad, and very deep issues. But on the face of it, Alice Bailey's 10-point plan was adopted from an entity or a spirit, and of course our own writings and readings and what her background is. We don't want to focus on her. But on face value, what is the attempt of that 10-point plan? Just read from number 1 to 10 for us.
Yeah, so for most people that don't know Alice Bailey, don't worry about that for now, because I'm just going to interject here and say, for most of us that have heard about the Great Reset, you'll be familiar with these points. So, and for those that want to find out more, just Google Alice Bailey or the Great Reset and you'll understand it fully. This is a full-on United Nations thing. It has been adopted by governments across the planet, and these points are inserted into everything that they are forcing onto us, like Uncle Tommy is saying, constitutions, to our school systems, and everything in between, even going right down to our youngest of children.
Education, family units.
As we are seeing in South Africa.
Yeah.
So here's this 10-point plan. This is how it goes. Take God and prayer out of the education system. Reduce parental authority. Now think about what's going on in the world at the moment when we hear these things. Take God and prayer out of the education system. Reduce parental authority over children. Destroy the Judeo-Christian family structure or the traditional Christian family structure. That is very specific. If sex is free, then make abortion legal and make it easy. Shoo. Make divorce easy and legal. Free people from the concept of marriage for life. It's gone from a covenant to a relationship. There's a big difference there. Make homosexuality an alternative lifestyle. Debase art. Make it run mad. Use media to promote and change mindsets. Create an interfaith movement. Hey, how many light bulbs are going off in people's heads right now? Get governments to make all these laws and get the church to endorse these changes. Those are the 10 points in a nutshell.
Well, thank you for reading that, Vaughan. Now, you can get more information about that. It's readily available. It's nothing hidden about this. In fact, it's quite open.
Very.
These people who want to roll out this agenda, they are not hiding. They are not doing it in secret. It's quite open, and we see it more aggressive than ever before in this century that is taking place. But Uncle Tommy, how should the church respond? What should be our conclusive thoughts and a response? You have got many resolutions. You have been forming and formatting and writing documents, bringing it to the attention of the church, making these issues public, contending at the gates if you wish. And you are really reaching out to people. And if you are listening to this podcast today, through us, you can reach out to Mr. Matomela. We are calling him Uncle Tommy because of the relationship we have developed with him. But you can reach out to him and tap on this very important issues. I believe he is quite equipped. He's got a mind of a wise man. He is a father in many senses in our city, in our nation. He's a man of great experience, great grace, and great understanding of these subjects. And if you want to reach out and bring him to your ministry, to your church, to youth groups, or convene a convention or conference, which at some point we have to bring this to the attention of the masses, we are asking you to think about that and allow these thoughts to come into our church spaces, which we rarely hear about. The average pastor is not talking about these issues, of course. How do we respond? We don't want to say this is the bad, dark cloud hanging over us. There is victory for us. If we come back to our Christian values, we come back to the nuclear family, we come back to the altar in our homes, we come back to loving God, we come back to the fear of God, and most importantly, we come back to doctrine. Doctrine is the solution to these secular mentalities. It is the foundation, it is the epicenter of our values and a godly kind of governance on the earth, the way God intended it, the original pattern. So, Mr. Matomela, Uncle Tommy, tell us, how should we respond as a church and what is our answer?
Maybe let me respond by telling you how I responded myself instead of theorizing.
I was going to ask you, how did you come across? It's very unusual for someone to have that you understand about this global cabal, this new age sort of mind. It's very hard to actually. How did you stumble on it? Did you go out specifically to find these things out? How did it happen before you go to your approach?
Maybe we can deal with that other day because it is very, it will be helpful to others. Because I really did not stumble in a way, but the Spirit of the Lord led
you to it
and directed me to this information, and it shocked me. And when I was exposed to this kind of information, I was very angry, to be honest. Because I asked the question.
And rightfully so. We should be angry.
Yes, I spent so many years in the education system, but I don't know about these things. I was very angry. Against everybody, against the church, against everybody. I was just very angry. But I had to prayerfully consider these things. And after more or less 4 to 5 years going through what the Holy Spirit was leading me. The least I can say is that I would be sitting, for example, in a waiting for the next flight. I will be having about 3 books I'm reading. But there will be this thing which is, I don't want to say thing, the Spirit in me would be saying, go to the bookshop. I would say, but why? I do have the reading material. But I'll oblige and go to the bookshop and, just go through, scan through and go outside.
Yeah.
I can't sit down. I'll have to go back. Then when I seriously consider, when I touch a particular book, I would sense it in my spirit and I will take it out, open it up. New stuff. Stuff which is, makes you to be fearful. Things you have never had.
Yeah, it shakes you, right?
Shakes me. And at some stage I had to buy a book. I could not because I was resisting, I went out. When I came back to the OR Tambo airport, I could not rest. I was on the domestic side. I had to run this way, go to the labor on the internationals. There was only 1 copy left. So I bought that copy. Right. So that's how the Holy Spirit helped me. Right. So when I had all this information, then I had to prayerful ask God what to do. One thing I learned, which I thank God for that, is that because I was so full of anger that I wanted to take the whole world about how they have treated me as a stupid individual.
That's exactly it.
I wanted to take them on. Yeah. But the Spirit of God advised me to say, more than 90% of your time spend teaching people about my kingdom.
Yes.
Spend
That's the solution.
Very little time on this thing. That shocked me as well. Because I thought I was going to be out there talking about these things. Then ultimately, I just, helped by the Holy Spirit, decided just to take on the 10 point. There are many books you can download. You can go to the private sections of bookshops in the world. You will find that you just ask them to take you where the books about the underworld are. And I won't advise people who are not,
don't start that.
Don't start there. Don't go there. Because it's another world. It will shock you. It may even, consume you.
Yeah.
Go there if only God prepares you as He prepared me.
Yes, because it can damage you.
It can damage you. In fact, it can make you even not to believe in God, by the way.
Correct.
Yes, correct.
It can make you to run away from God and join the same evil people.
Yes.
Who have written that stuff.
Yes.
It's a very serious. Many people, even atheists, I sympathize with them. Because those people, not make a mistake, they are in religion. So people hate God because of how we are conducting ourselves in religions. Whatever religion you talk about, they are infiltrated, all of them. So people then, when they hate what religions are doing, they think that they are hating God. So I'm putting this before the church leaders to say, is it possible for us to separate God and faith in God from our own religions? That is the topic for another day. I think we need to consider that seriously.
Yes.
Number 2, what I did, I took this document because I consider everybody which is here, we have implemented in South Africa 100%. And yet, when you look on issues which are in the manifesto of the ruling party, we have failed to implement. But this one, which is not in the manifesto of the ruling party, is implemented by our own government. That really struck me.
Yeah.
So I had to go to the headquarters, Elutuli. Fortunately, I met with people like Mushekha, and others who were
you met with what's his name?
Advocate Mushekha, who is in Parliament right now, So I met with them first.
Right.
When I was not happy, I went to meet the Secretary General during the era of Mbeki, Kwetemantache, who is now the chairperson of the ANC. Right. I was having a hard copy. I showed him. In fact, when I was going to Luthuli, he said, I'm coming to Eastern Cape. I met him in PE. I said, Chief, do you know this document? He said, I've never seen this document. But I said to him, do you understand that everything has been implemented here? One thing to illustrate what I'm talking about. The interfaith in South Africa might have been there, but its implementation was done by the ANC.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Right.
ANC established interfaith structures during the time of the former President Zuma. I know. I confronted them. In fact, after Polokwane, in the constitution of the ANC, there was a clause dealing with chaplains. But now, after Polokwane, they are referred to as interfaith chaplains. During the years of struggle, we used to call ourselves religious organizations or religious formations. And we knew all of that. All of us, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, all of us were in the ANC. And we were fighting about nothing but against the enemy, But all of a sudden, after 1994, we are told that we are interfaith. and I went to research this. I realized that this thing is the introduction to what is called one world religion.
Yes.
Where everybody will be expected to worship Lucifer.
Yes.
And if you object, you face the consequences. People don't know about that. You can't blame them. So I challenged the ANC in 2012. I said to them, if you don't change this in the conference of the ANC, I'm going to go public.
Right.
And tell the people of South Africa that you are a Satanist organization. I will point out that you have changed the constitution of the ANC to reflect what you are now. You are no longer that organization which was formed by believing, traditional leaders and religious leaders, if you like. Now you have become a Satanist organization and you are implementing a satanic plan. I gave them this plan. I even wrote a letter through the secretary, the Honorable Mabuyane, who is the premier. He was the secretary then. I said, change this thing.
Right.
And it was changed. So I commended the ANC on that one. But the truth is that they continued to work with the structures of the interfaith. It didn't disappear.
It didn't go away.
Disappear.
Yes.
But I said one thing to them. I said, you know what? If you don't know about this document, where is this program coming from in government? Because program of government is supposed to be informed by the resolutions of the ANC, programs of the ANC, and should inform what is happening in government. Where is this thing coming from? They did not know. I said, this thing is never discussed in any branches of the ANC. But why is it implemented in government is a mystery. Now, what I've come to understand is that the global cabal is working through the United Nations organization. So they are well organized, well financed. They don't waste their time going to political parties outside government.
Yes.
They go to government. They go to ministers. They go to
they're lobbying all the time.
Administrators. They lobby there.
Yes.
The pieces of legislations which are implementing the 10-point plan, they are not going via political parties outside. They go directly to political parties inside government.
Correct.
That's how they are implementing this thing.
Right.
So from 1996, South Africa has implemented that 100% today. I'll just make one example. We used to be a praying nation in schools.
Right.
In the morning, you will come to the assemblies.
Yes. The entire school.
When we're going home, the entire school. Those who are more energetic, when their classes are dismissing, they will do that, and so on and so on. People don't know that that was, in a way, a covering over the young people. If you compare what was happening then and now, two different worlds.
Completely.
That's right.
The youth of today is not exposed. In fact, they are taught that this is rubbish, this is non-existent, and so on and so on. And look at the behavior of the children of that time and the children of this time.
Right.
So this thing is deliberate to do what? To corrupt society, so that society remain lawlessness, society remain disobedient to God, society becomes violent, and so on and so on.
Godless.
Who is benefiting from that? It's the spirit of Satan, Lucifer, the devil, if you like, and the whole host of that kingdom of darkness and lawlessness. Now, I then approached the Council of Churches, the South African Council of Churches. I said, on my studies, you are featuring a lot because you end up globally with the World Council of Churches.
You're the main culprit.
And then it becomes the main culprit. What is happening? I can name the key leaders of the Council of Churches. I went to them. They said that Matomela, we know nothing about this thing. And I believe them. I really believe them. Because these things are done at a global stage.
Yes.
And these decisions are just, sent down to their structures. And they come as binding positions of these organizations.
Yes.
Political parties are operating the same way. They meet globally. Communist International, Liberation International. They meet there. They take resolutions.
Human rights
and then these resolutions go down as positions.
Right.
So these things are implemented. So its deeper meaning may not be understood at that level. So my submission is that the way the church has been compromised is the same way political parties have been used by the system.
Yes.
In the same way the church has been corrupted and compromised by the system. So I would say all of us, we are victims. And we are as good as fast asleep. But I would say maybe God allowed these things to happen so that we may reach this stage.
Yes.
When we say, where communism has been implemented effectively and served the best interests of the people. When you go to Soviet Union, zero now. If you go to China, that's not communism which is implemented in China. That's state capitalism, where the state is God.
Yes, and controls everything.
It controls everything. Everybody must be dependent. You see how look at how Russia respond to people who protest. Look at how China do the same. So these guys are dictators. They don't care. So is that the type of government we want as citizens of the world, of the nations? The answer is no. So how can then collectively we respond to the situation? I am saying, let us review everything. And it's not going to be difficult for us to do so. I have tested that if 1, 2, or 3 are one in mind with God, there will be overcomers. We have demonstrated that through the Electoral Act bill. We were very few. We did not have money. We approached kingdom advocates. They agreed to work with us, and we won the case. Now we're in a process of amending that Electoral Act. Political parties are refusing to surrender what belongs to the citizens. Citizens, they don't know that power belongs to them. Now the easy thing the church can do is to go back to the original vision before the fall of Adam.
Yes.
Do we have clarity of the vision of God before the fall of Adam? Let's go there. Search for values, principles, and so on. We go
to the blueprint, to the original.
Others can claim that they receive blueprint from God, from the Holy Spirit. Bring it on the table.
Right.
We had some conferences in the past where we're saying all those who claim to have blueprints come. We organize conferences. So I'm going to challenge the one of the kingdom leaders who was collecting that. Say now is the time. Bring those blueprints so that we can prepare a plan to liberate ourselves as the people of God. Right. Whether you are believing or not believing, we don't care, because even God, his reign over the righteous and unrighteous.
Yes.
So God is the judge. Ours is to work together. But at least, Von, I would say, let us agree on fundamental principles and values
Yes.
we are going to use to build ourselves as individuals, as families. I mean, I've studied, for example, the universal values. So let's go there. And then we agree that these are the instrument you are calling, for example, them accurate building concepts to build prosperous cities and covenant nations. So let's take all of those. Let's share them amongst ourselves. Let's engage with everybody. Whether you belong to that faith, doesn't matter. Whether you dark brown or you believe, the fake narrative that you are black or white. Let's come together.
Yes.
Let us say, what instruments can we use to build, prosperous cities, covenant nations in line with God? Once we agree on that, then we use them. We use the same values to measure whether we're on track or we're not on track, without condemning anybody, because all of us, we are sinners. If you take the church, we have sinned before God. If you take political parties, they have failed us. If you take business people, they have hooted wealth. The rest of the people are in hunger. They are unemployed. Unemployment is in the regions of 40%
Yes.
now. So everybody has failed. So why can't we come together and say, now, when we look behind, we are a failed civilization. How do we plan the way forward? My submission is that the best approach is to approach young people.
Yeah.
I was challenging a civic organization 2 weeks ago, saying to them, why are you focusing on building your civic movement rather than building the structures of the nation for everybody?
That's right.
And I asked them a question. How old do you think Adam was when he was placed in the Garden of Eden? The leader said, I think he was about 80 years. And I said to him, that's the mentality to have. But I challenge you, Adam was a teenager. Adam and Eve, they were teenagers. You can go on generation from generation. When God wants to introduce radical changes, he uses young people.
Oh, yes.
At their teenage.
Yeah, the prime
now,
of
there
the
is
life.
a wealth of young people in our churches, in our traditional communities,
Yes.
in the cities. Why can't we mobilize these young people and engage them as we're doing here and say, let us cast a vision for the future, your own future, our own future. It depends if we're going to live 10 years, that doesn't matter. But let's come together. Let's shape our vision. We work on that. We agree on the values. We agree on the principles. We say these are the fundamentals, and so on and so on. We may even say, okay, some of us believe in homosexuality, as you are saying, and then others don't believe in that. So how do we solve that? The consensus. The consensus I will propose is that, okay, if that is the love you choose, but don't impose it on me and my children.
That's right.
Don't force
Don't push the
government
agenda,
to legislate that on your behalf. Because if government legislates that on your behalf, I'm going to go to the same government and say, legislate my beliefs too.
Yes.
So let us find common ground here so that I'm able to live my own values, so that young people can see that people who live this type of life, they are living good life.
Yeah.
So my submission is that that is the challenge before us, all of us, as the church, as all religions, and I'm submitting that we must operate above all these religions because they have major faults.
Yeah.
If you go back to their history, they are not supposed, if you take Africa, for example, Christianity, we may treat it as a foreign religion. If you take Islam, it's even slavery religion, and so on and so on. So let us accept that that is our legacy, that is our history. But now we want to move forward. Can we operate above that?
A different level, a higher
different
level.
levels, a higher level. We take the values which manifest the character, the attributes of our Creator.
Right.
And we must not say our Creator only in heaven, because his throne is in heaven and on earth. Not so.
Yeah.
And his throne is even in our hearts. So literally, let us find solutions in him. whether in heaven, whether here on earth, when I look at you, Von, I must know that whether you believe in God or not, it doesn't matter, but you are his creation because you did not create yourself. You'll say, no, it's my father, it's my grandfather, and I'll go on and on and on and say, who created that one?
Yeah.
Then you will say it's a stone. I will say, I don't mind because I know that God is regarded as the rock of ages. and you will say, and so on. So let us come together.
It's a deep hole. We don't want to go.
Find a solution
Yeah.
so that we, at least, even if you're a believer, I am not a believer, let's live in peace with one another.
Uncle Tommy, I say this all the time. I'm not here as a believer to spend my time with other believers. If you're a non-believer, I'll work with you. I'll work with you if you're Hindu, Muslim. It doesn't matter. You can be an atheist. You can be anything. If you hang around me long enough, you will become a believer.
Well, that the beauty of a child of God or a son of God is that they have no prejudice and no bias, and they don't see with the lens of the flesh. They see with the eyes of the Spirit. And Uncle Tommy, you have said much there, and if we have to unpack each of those points, we would love to talk for a long time. The two outstanding ones that are running havoc in our society, and I believe it's being pushed more than any others. Yes, get God out of the public domain, even out of our homes if they could, and begin to legislate that and regulate that, they would do it. But the sensualizing and the sexualizing of our children, and we have seen that with the introduction of sex education from a young age, and this is not a controlled type of, we're studying, I think for us who study patterns of what's going to happen predominantly in African countries or certain countries that follow the direction and the directive of the West, we find out that these things are being taught in the schools, and the parents thankfully are standing up finally, because COVID has given them a preview of what the kids are learning in school. So when they were homeschooled and they had to do the work, they found out, this is what my child is learning in school. This radical type of living, godless, lawless way of living, and the sexualization of children, and promoting an identity crisis from a young age. I mean, some schools are giving kids as 4 years old, these, what do you call this, alter the sexual
hormone blockers.
Hormone blockers, and without the parents' consent. So parents are rising up. That's a good thing. But the sexualization of our young children, which you must stand up against, because eventually they will. Part of this plan is to make pedophilia normal, and we understand what the agenda is. So we don't want to focus too much on that. And the other connected to that is the complete destruction of God's plan for the nuclear family, which is mother, father, children. This is God's agenda, God's plan, God's natural order of things, which they want to completely disrupt, divide, and destroy. So we need to understand that and start focusing on these subjects and topics to empower our young people on how God designed His ecosystem, His plan for family. Because once you take just take the father out of a family, you have damaged that family and you have destroyed the future of that family. And we have seen the results of that. Much of the some of the things that we are dealing with now as an offshoot of apartheid was absent fathers, the Group Areas Act. People had to live far away from one another, travel to far places to work, so the family was neglected. These issues are really some of the issues that we need to stand up against. We need to sharpen ourselves in our church circles. And if you are listening to this today and you have caught wind of this podcast or this program on our YouTube channel, we want you to go and look at these subjects. Begin to speak about them in your church circles. Yeah. Begin to talk to them with your pastor. Join city church organizations. And I think the thing that we need to really settle in our hearts, Uncle Tommy, is the importance. I think for us, this particular discussions that we are having is to direct you to one problem-solving issue, which is the Word of God. You can solve any problem. If we do not get back to the Word of God, these troubles are going to perplex us even more in the years to come, because evil is evolving. The wheat and the tares grow together. We are not against religion. We're not against and fighting them. I think this is another problem we have. The church does not know who they are fighting. So they fight Hindus and Muslims and atheists, and they are battling people on fronts they're not supposed to fight. If we bring the Word of God as the centrality of our churches, the centrality of our youth groups, the centrality of every activity and program that we have, must be centered around the Word of God. It must be the divine substation that defines us, that directs us, that leads us. And we're not just talking about preaching messages. We are talking about breaking the Word of God, breaking the bread of God's Word, exegeting the Word of God. Therefore, our churches must become learning centers and teaching centers of God's Word, and also an holistic lifestyle, talking about marriage, the nuclear family, talking about our moralities, our ethics, and the way we function as a kingdom. These are the things that are important, because the believer has to have a very high standard as compared. And this will be the salt in this saltless and flavorless world. That's what I propose. And I thank God for people like you and others that you are partnering with, that have this deep love for the Word of God, because God is His Word, and we cannot separate the Word from our godly principles. They are not just abstract and distant from one another. So, Uncle Tommy, how should we bring our churches back to the Word of God? I think you agree that this is our central position. Everything pivots on this. The Spirit-filled Word of God, and you being in churches, you speaking on different platforms, there is a neglect of God's Word, and these things will prevail if we do not build this firewall and build this restraint, and the Word of God can do that. So, in closing, just tell us the importance of the Word of God back in our churches, back in our cities, back in our denominations, etc.
Thank you, Ronald. My proposal is that we go back to the Word, and we dig deep and distill the values out of the Word of God. That's what I'm even teaching my children. When we read, I say, what are the values there? What are positive values, negative values, and so on. So if we do that, we will be able to do away with religion, because you'll find that all these values are there in all our religions, but unfortunately they are coated by religious activities, behaviors, and so on,
rituals.
So rituals.
Mundane ceremony.
We need to deal with those, so that we are religious people. It means the sons and daughters of God are going to come from all these religions. But God must be our center. His Word must be the center. The values and principles, which are attributes of God's character. In Christian language, we say fruits of the Spirit. So let us focus on those things. When people are pointing us to individuals, say, but look at so-and-so, look at so-and-so. Look, so-and-so is exposing that love to show how people who are claiming to be people of God, but really live another life.
Yeah.
That's a good example. But you can also point out to others who are living a righteous life. So I would say we don't deny anything. We accept where our people have betrayed, God. They've betrayed their faith and so on. Said, but that is a very bad example. There's people who, like Lucifer, who was in the midst of the holy, but he decided to behave in a particular fashion. So we don't protect evil because you are protecting your own religion. If somebody is a Christian and he is behaving like Satan, you must say that is not a Christian. If you are a Muslim, the same thing. People will say, why you colonize us? You're saying these people were used by the devil. We must stop colonialism of the mind and of our resources and so on. What about Muslims who are killing and so on and so on? But you can go and read their document and look into the principles and values. We distill that to say that is a religious behavior, that is not a godly behavior. And we do that with all our religions so that we migrate from all religions into the kingdom of God.
To the current proceeding.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that is where we need to go. So, and as a church, let us not be holier than thou when we talk about political parties. Let us do the same and saying, originally ANC, these are the values you stood for.
Remind them.
You have moved away, so let us come back. You do so with all political parties. Communist political parties say to them, this is what you promised the people. It did not happen. You became brutal. You became oppressors. I mean, after the fall of Soviet Union, this was big debate within the circles of the alliance. For example, saying what happened in Soviet Union. The major issue which was raised was lack of democracy. So all these systems are not good systems. What system would you follow? Let us be pragmatic and say these are the values. Let's judge this system according to these values and principles which are applying universally. But we make it sure that we don't end up worshipping religion, worshipping individuals, and so on and so on. So if all the people of God, Russians and un-Russia, and like what Von was saying, that's exactly what Jesus Christ said. Because they challenged him, said, if you are the Son of God, why are you fellowshipping with taxpayers, with sinners and all that? He said, I'm like a doctor. A doctor is never sent to the healthy, he is sent to the sick. So my father did not send me to the Russians. He sent me to the un-Russians. So let's come together. Love is love. We can see that people are pretending. And sometimes definition of righteousness, love, and so on is on religious basis. People, they define righteousness.
Their own internal prejudice and bias,
So the same righteousness, when they define it, it does not apply to other people. We must deal with those things openly, with love, so that at the end of the day, we find solutions for our future as humankind. As I said earlier on, this civilization is a failed civilization. We need something new. We must go back to the drawing board and say, this is the original vision of our maker. These are the values. This is his plan. By the way, even Christian religion, for example, it was commanded, it was commissioned to disciple nations. When you talk nations, you are dealing there with what I call collective sins. Collective sins are all the social ills we're talking about. I mean, if you're talking about why the people of Africa are hungry when they are in the midst of plenty, it is for collective sins.
You're right.
Why they are dying in the midst of advanced medicines and so on. During COVID, the rich countries had everything to protect themselves. And they were expecting that millions of people are going to die in Africa. But what happened? The opposite happened. So that clearly shows that this is the season where God is exposing the whole system. God is judging the whole system. For us to be saved then, we must come back to our God. Let's search for him. That's the scripture says, seek the kingdom of God and His
First,
righteousness first, and everything shall be added unto you. That is where I would submit. Now, we're talking holistically. We must change our political system, because we human beings, we are not designed to oppress one another. So political parties, they are dominating other people. That system is wrong. Let's change it.
Right.
The economy was designed to serve all of us. All the systems of the world have failed to serve the people of God economically. So we need a new economic system. And we can go on and on. The education system, I mean, all our children who have passed, they can't produce anything. They are looking for jobs. So if jobs are not there, they sit at home, then they end up planning all the evils on earth. So our education system need to be overhauled, because it is not helpful. So we can go on and on. But this thing doesn't need political parties. It needs citizens. It needs people.
Yes.
It needs, traditional communities, religious communities to come together and say, how do we move forward?
Yes.
And then we do that.
So
that is what we are doing as Citizens Parliament, because the reason why we are organizing Citizens Parliament, we are saying citizens cannot be spectators. All these generations, citizens must be taking full responsibility for their own future.
Yes.
So everybody, that is what we are doing. We are not forming these things against our leaders, but we want to support those leaders who are doing the right thing and remove those who are not doing the right things.
Yes, we should.
And not cruelly, of course, but using the constitutions so that we transform, our nations to be nations of peace, justice, righteousness, prosperity, love, and joy.
Excellent. Well, that was a great insight to how we can begin to resolve and solve some of these pressing and major issues that we are dealing with. We have covered the issue there of, we have heard of state capture, we have heard of church capture, and we have spoken about mind capture today, and spiritual colonization, if you will. And we have been captured sometimes by our own religious circles, our own traditions, our man-made customs, and man-made ideas that have kept us distant from these issues that we can actively begin to participate and begin to resolve. And so today, this discussion was so robust, and I think it was so enjoyable, because there's sort of a jumping in our womb when we hear like-minded people like you, Uncle Tommy, and of course, it's so refreshing to see a man of your age on the pulse of these issues, engaging, and you have been keeping up and informing us, and informing the church, and informing our communities and the nation of these important subjects. So we thank God that a man as distinguished as you can find time to talk to us and remind us, and we hope that you join us again. But you have given us so much of content. We need to create episode 1 and 2 now. We've got 2 episodes here, because you have really dug in deep, and the passion that you have been sharing these issues and your vast experience. Just quickly, you're involved with, yes, of course, nation building and this responsible citizenship or righteous citizenship of all people. It doesn't matter, as you mentioned, from which background. All of us can practice righteousness and morality, and taking care of our fellow human beings and our brothers and our sisters, irrespective. I think that's also the danger with the church. We think our brothers and sisters are always the ones in church circles, but it's our neighbor, it's the person in the taxi, in the bus, in our public squares, in different areas of our life, our workplace, universities, schools. We should be caring for one another's well-being. And just tell us quickly what you are involved in currently, directly, and what you're working on.
We started, as I've already indicated, challenging the Electoral Act. Parliament has been given until 10th of December, and our responsibility now, we know that we will not get the bill which is transferring sovereign power to the people under political parties, because they are conflicted, they're interested parties. So we believe that once they finalize that process, ignoring whatever we have said, we will take that to the Constitutional Court for certification. So we will be specific in terms of each and every clause which we are not happy. We will have a specific proposal, so that if the court agrees with us, those will be read into that bill, so that in 2024 we may go to the elections. Number two, lack of education, political education in particular. Citizenship is critical. Citizens don't know when they were voting that they were creating the chaos we see in local government, for example. So they need to be educated about those things. So we are going to focus on going to the people. We want churches to convene, workshop, whatever. We can come in, teach them, and they have teams which can continuously, when we're not there, teaching themselves, so that as a church or as an imbizo in a village, you become an assemble of the kingdom of God who created you. Whether you are in church or in a traditional community, you become a sovereign citizen of the kingdom of God in heaven on earth. So nobody is supposed to rule over you. If you are in a situation where you have to appoint or elect leaders, you must do that directly, and that person must be directly responsible to you and accountable to you. If he is encountering challenges, he comes to you, you give advice. So in other words, people in government, locally, provincially, and nationally, are supposed to be working together with citizens. You can't surrender your sovereignty. You can delegate something to somebody. So we must also deal with the issues of defining a state, the nation, and government. Otherwise, we are confused now. Even those in government, they are confusing these things. We started politics. In political science, we know that a nation is permanent, a government is temporal. But they are confusing these things, deliberately. So we are also dealing with the economy. We're not happy about the economy. We are engaging economists, where others are writing books so that they provide solutions. So that when we bring these things before the church, the traditional communities, ordinary citizens, we may reach consensus and say, this is the way we will be producing wealth for all of us. Because you start distributing what you don't have. We must start by saying how all of us in families and in communities produce wealth, and how then do we distribute it so that it's fairly distributed. And we can make wealth, we can make a profit, but how do we serve ourselves and then sell the surplus? And when we have that money, it goes to everybody according to the principles. We are not going to give people who are not working money. Even the Bible says so. Those who don't want to work, don't give them food. That's what the Bible says. So the communists took those things from the Bible. So the economy, we must deal with the economy. Other structures are, we have just launched the Africa Citizens Parliament, because this thing, Africa, in fact, I believe that God is challenging Africa to rise up and even to be above all other nations as a new, righteous, peaceful, just, prosperous, so and so nation in the world. So that the vision of Israel as a righteous nation, I think that assignment is given to Africa now to become an example to all the nations of the world. So we are talking as ordinary citizens of Africa. We will be talking to the Pan-African Parliament. We'll be talking to the African Union. We'll be talking to businesses. And all over the continent of Africa, including South Africa, we want the Oppenheimers, the Ruperts of this world. We want to sit them like this and say, is it fair? Is it Russia's that you have so many billions, I've got nothing, and yet I'm not a lazy person, I want to work. You gave me a corrupted, compromised education and so on. And if it is not fair, how do we take forward? How much can we take? We're not going to say we'll kill you and take your wealth. No. How much can you give? We are going to even make suggestions. We believe that give us so much so that all of you business people give us so much so that we don't want you to be poor. We don't our people to be poor. So let's go 50-50, whatever percentage we'll agree on. So the revolutionaries of the 60s, 70s, they were saying, oh, these people will never agree to that. But today I can tell you they are going to agree. Because if they don't, they are going to go to hell. I don't know what hell is. God will prepare that hell or Satan.
Damnation.
But they will be, faced with damnation.
Yeah.
So if they don't want damnation, let's find solutions.
Yes.
So we will be working with everybody. But my only concern, which I'm appealing to every citizen out there, whether in South Africa or Africa, all over the world, we need to work in oneness. We need to be one.
Yes.
So if
That's
you have got a passion, you have got resources, bring all those so that we can work together. We mobilize ourselves. We are not mobilizing ourselves against anybody. We are mobilizing against anything which is a stumbling block to our prosperity as all humankind. So let's come together. Those who have got skills, to educate others, bring those tools. Those who have got resources, bring those resources. We educate ourselves as citizens. I'm telling you, Apostle, if we can do that, it cannot take 10 years to change the continent of Africa. Within 10 years, the continent of Africa will be totally different. Because, for example, why all our resources are being exported?
Yes.
We're not going to fight against China, Russia, US, EU. We're going to say, those who are honest, who want us to be liberated, we must agree that we are not going to give you license, provided you are going to make it sure that the percentage, 50, maybe when we start, 60% and so on, is processed here locally.
Right.
We make products.
Build your own nation.
And then we export these products.
Right.
There must be an agreement. And somebody who says no to that, you must tell us. So we must not allow monopoly at the expense of the lives of our people. So we will not be, we don't want our people to continue burning tires, damaging their own streets and so
looting
and I mean, we did that during apartheid years. Now we're supposed to be educating one another. We're supposed to send to Parliament people who are incorruptible, who have high ethics. We can't just people meet in the corner as a political party. They say they are going to do ABC. We trust them. We know those who are working with us every day. Let's take some of them. We must agree on a list of things which will constitute the code of conduct beforehand to say everybody who meets this standard, you identify that person yourself as a citizen. That person will be accountable to you as a citizen. That person is paid by you as a citizen. That person cannot rule over you. He can govern with you. So we work all those principles. I am telling you, young people
transform the society.
The society as a whole.
Yeah.
And we don't need to be be complicated. We must be very simple. Let's present problems. Let's present solutions. Whoever brings the solutions, as long those solutions are aligned with the will and purposes of the creator of our universe, because it was for our good. That's why when earth was created, said it is good.
It is good.
When plants were created after that, said this is good. So when we were created, it's very good.
Very good.
So all these things were created for our goodness as humankind. So let's come together. Even if you believe, you don't believe, that's your own problem. But those who believe will try, to convince you. And now you're free to convince them, other way. But the judgment will come. But most importantly, the life of a person must be the preacher. We as a church people, if we are righteous, we must live righteous lives. And if we are falling short, let's check what is making us to fall short, instead of attacking one another, and improve on that.
And
these young people who have vowed to be righteous, let's support them. But let's make their life meaningful every day. They must have jobs. They must enjoy themselves. We must produce creative, recreation stuff for them, so that they are full of joy.
Yes.
Rather than the misery we see, and as a result, they go to drugs. They do other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just our collective responsibility. And I believe that if we're united in that vision, we're united in using which values, we're united in our plans, we have got all the skills, as we were saying, Pastor Ronald. All the skills are there in the church. They are there in traditional communities. Let's come together. Let's make South Africa great, as they were saying about America. Let's make Africa great, but not for a particular group of people, for all of us.